vibes today, and man, it's interesting. I'd be curious if you've been feeling the kick in of the Aries energy. Uh, Comment below with this like some of it's kind of fight me energy and like, oh, you want to bet and don't believe me, just watch. They both in the good way and the icky way. Definitely some bratty energy. A lot to do with father figures, father wounds, and challenges to like courage and honesty, especially and clarity, which mixes into. Let me know if you're feeling the Libra energy that is still it's still extremely strong, and it's going to be because it's mixing over the next 6 months. But that's definitely justice energy, vindication, clarity, being like if anybody's been lying or manipulating, they're being caught in it. And a lot of accountability energy. The justice card very much has to do with accountability. And I think those that have been in masculine energy, especially toxic masculine energy, which I mean, it can male, female, karmic twin flame, family, parents, like all of that stuff. Those that have not been accountable or been running from accountability are being caught. And there's a lot of clarifying energy coming in. So, especially if you've been waiting for, like, say, someone to see the truth about something. Sorry, I'm retying my shoe. Um, it's happening. It's happening. And you might not see it because swords very much have to do with intuition. So you might be feeling it happening, and you might see it happening, or you might hear about it happening through other people in your collective, your friends group, your family, things like that, or you might just be thinking about that stuff. So it's happening with others. It's happening all around, and especially like if you're feeling that justice energy. In any case, I think the biggest vibe that I'm sensing today, there's two of them. One is this clash of titans. It keeps getting repeated, and I know astrologically it makes sense, but I think that it's playing out somewhere in everybody's lives, and it's I mean, Clash of Titans isn't just like two titans going head to head, but I think that's an energy in there. You might know that you're going head to head with somebody, or you might not know. You might be going head to head with somebody and not know because it's a third party thing, and there's maybe somebody else that you're going toe to toe with in their attempt to block the direct interactions or something, or it might be like a challenging of like this person said this to challenge you, or things like that, but we're all stepping into our power in some way, which if you've not been great about holding boundaries, it might feel awkward for you, or if you've been working on that, it feels great for you, it might feel really awkward for other people around you. um, but it's good. And if they have, there are times in life when a negative response is actually a positive response, and it's often if we've been very codependent with people, and like in order to get to that space of independence and holding strong healthy boundaries, a lot of times the people around us, most especially those people who really needed the boundaries and were really abusing and misusing us, they're going to react the most volatilely, the most manipulatively. And and because it's actually it's very childlike responses. Like if you have a child that you've spoiled and you've not held them to actual structure and accountability, they're going to freak out when you start suddenly having healthy rules, especially if you don't if you don't yell or go into an old place, you're in a strong secure place. It's going to freak them out. Adults do that too, especially if they've managed to go through a large chunk of their lives either being able to run away from said situations or just not really being challenged. The other major energy that I'm sensing is clarity. Definitely a key word in there. And it definitely seems wrapped in with the Clash of the Titans energy. And I mean, come on, Aries and Libra, like the Emperor and Justice, that's definitely clashing in there. And it's feminine and masculine energy too. So it may be like if you're on a twin flame journey, or it may be you're interacting with another DF or DM, that's part of that. It's a clash of the titans, but it's good. It's bringing clarity to things. Like you typically I'm one of those that says avoid fighting. But there are, I mean, even they talk about in relationships, a relationship where you never fight, that's really bizarre. Like, I mean, you don't want a relationship where you fight all the time. But there are some moments when it's good to have the conflict and it actually shows you, like, what happens after the conflict. Like, that's where it really matters. Did you get to a resolution? Did you learn something about yourself, about them, things like that? If not, if it's just a repeating thing that's happening over and over again, that's not okay. And don't allow that. Stop explaining yourself. Stop giving into it. Stop having more of those fights. Just speak your piece and that's it. And you know that you can hold it. But I really, I feel like there's a really, really deep energy that's coming up. I feel like all of the Capricorn energy we had last year and the Piscean energy, because that was the big full moon that affected us up until I realized it was up until the switchover when we had another super full moon when it was then the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces. So we had Pisces sun with Virgo that affected 6 months, and then we switched over to Virgo Pisces. So it's on the same axis. We'll probably see the same thing this year, but I'm not that great of an astrologer to know that for sure. That's my intuition until I get more information. Um, but I think because of all that, all the retrograde energy, all the Capricorn energy, especially retrograde, because that's like devil in reverse and stuff, and it's a lot of illusions. It's a lot of like non-consensual bondage through emotional manipulation, things like that. And then with the Piscean energy, especially in reverse, in retrograde, it's like in direct energy, it actually breaks down boundaries and barriers and things like that. So when it's retrograde, you see like you see boundaries that should be held not being held, or you see an opposite of too strong a boundaries, things like that. You may have seen this start up sometime around like June, July, maybe even August of last year, or even September. Like some sort of thing happened with boundaries and delays in communication and lies, lots of lying, lots of deceitfulness, lots of omissions, things like that. Even how we lie to ourselves. I know I even did some videos about how we can gaslight ourselves with things like, I was just talking about it today, things like, what is it? Beggars can't be choosers. And another one is like closed mouths don't get fed, things like that. And we gaslight ourselves into, because what does that say? Closed mouth don't get fed is a way that we get trained to believe that if we didn't open our mouth to say anything, it's our fault that we got hurt. And beggars can't be choosers is a way of like convincing ourselves that we should not speak up about an injustice to somebody we're in unhealthy dynamics with because we need their help or we feel like we need their help, things like that. There was a lot of that energy last year, and a lot of this new energy coming in, especially with Uranus having gone direct in January after being retrograde for so long. We're seeing a lot. Oh man, that's so funny. I just got an update from another. It's somebody I've been meaning to watch. Their channel's called The Real Divine Masculine. I've only watched them a couple times, but it said miscarriages increase. And actually, what's funny is that's an energy that I've been noticing. I wasn't sure even really to talk about it, but you know what? This is the third time that it's come up, and I think that's a lot to do with the clarifying stuff. I think that there are a lot of people that are finding out, like kids that they thought were theirs weren't, or that they were in toxic relationships with somebody who said they were pregnant when they weren't, or said that, or if they were pregnant, that it wasn't the other person's, and they said that it was, or they exaggerated it to try to create a stronger emotional string. And also just in terms of emotional strings, I think that we're really seeing it, we're hitting that clarifying moment of what do I want to hold on to and why, and how are people manipulating me versus they're having genuine feelings. Like, what's the difference between a person who is actively trying to keep me trapped in a toxic situation that's not good for me versus somebody who's having a natural emotional reaction to my unhealthy dynamics with them? I think that's because think about it too. Swords, there's two sides to the sword, a double-edged sword, right? And so oftentimes we see the dynamics that we have, like with one person, with others as well. They'll be a little bit different, but it's really that clarifying stuff. And I think there's a lot of energy to do with how we've been carrying burdens that we weren't meant to, that people put on us either because of their traumas, because there are plenty of times, unfortunately the statistics are very high, both with, I'm going to say young women, like teenage women, and adult women who will use things like marriage and pregnancy and things like that, even actual children, to manipulate the father, to create dramas and things like that. And then you also have a string of women who are just upset about like inappropriate dynamics with guys who are not, either young men or adult men who are not being healthy and not being appropriate. I think both axes are being highlighted. It's a lot to do with fatherhood stuff, and I think you're probably going to be hearing a fair amount of people either talking about their stories with the miscarriage or blighted ovums, or times when they found out that pregnancy, or told them a kid was theirs that wasn't, or even if it was, that they really, like, they were really milking it to try to get something out of them. And I think there's also going to be a lot of healing coming up from here on out about like releasing burdens that either weren't ours to carry, or that we've been like that other people then have been using to get us to stay, or and or recognizing that even if we do have a burden to carry, that we don't have to carry it, that we don't have to carry our emotional baggage like right up here. Like, imagine you got a 50-pound bag of all the trauma that you've been through, and you carrying it with one hand right up here under your chin. It's exhausting and it's tiring, and you're never going to be able to focus on anything else in your life. So even if you have been through an extremely traumatic experience, or things like losing a child, any of that, or somebody doing like lying about stuff like that, you're going to see that your life just you're going to continue to manifest more experiences like that, so long as you hold on to that stuff. If you don't look into it, you don't dig deeper, you don't reparent yourself, you don't get therapy, or find a community that supports you in facing that stuff, because we often manifest relationships like that unknowingly, because we are replaying and playing out the traumas that we saw our parents go through. And typically you can see the traumas that you have. If you look back and think about your parents' story, you're going to see that there's a lot of links. And it's because we do that until we both become conscious of what we've been through, and we get to a space to where we can both disown that it wasn't our fault that we got there. And when sometimes you have to go through, like, well, it was my parents' fault, and that's anger and grief and things, and then you get to the point where you realize their parents did that to them too. And it doesn't make it acceptable that they did it to you, but it's recognizing that a lot of this generation, we're breaking generational curses. We're reversing a lot of curses too. That's been another key word that's coming up. It's not just break the curse, it's reverse the curse. And which is an energy I love. I'd never thought about it before. Like that's a really cool absurdity to embrace, is that you don't have to break a curse, just reverse the curse. And I think that energy is coming up because we're all kind of leveling up in our own ways. And I think that because of the Justice card and Emperor card energy with Aries and Libra, I think that's part of the clash of the Titans energy that's coming up. Is one, it's that protector energy, but it's also recognizing there can be a dark side to protector energy. You can be manipulative. You can try to do things that you think are the best for other people, and even if it is, that's not a healthy relationship. That's the other thing. I think we're really seeing and highlighting what relationships we've been in that are trauma bonding. That isn't actually a genuine relationship. And I don't remember all of the keys of it. I might do a separate video about it. But like trauma bonding would be like you have the rescuer hero dynamic, to where like one, like usually it's both of you, but one of you tends to play out the victim more often, and the other one plays the hero more often. But it's almost always wrapped up into drama stuff. Like if somebody really genuinely just needed a hand up, typically because just a bad circumstance, typically they will get themselves out of it and they won't like make you the main person to be there to carry their burdens if they, while they get through it. And like, I mean, and there can be all sorts of circumstances that happens in, but somebody who's unhealed, who you're actually hurting by helping them, is somebody that continues to keep that dynamic going. And they typically only even bring up the victim hero role, like oh, nobody loves me, or I'm just a good person that never gets anything good going for them, or I never get a break, or everybody mistreats me, or things like that. And then the other side of, don't you see how much I've done for you? And it's funny. I'm so seeing the duality too, because I think there are many times in our lives where both things, like both can be true. That's another big energy coming up. I think that one's going to progress. Is both can be true. You can have one person who is telling you, "Look what everything I've done for you," and they're manipulating you. They haven't really done anything. If you look at the evidence, what have they done for you? Whereas you can have someone else who's really hurt by the way that you have, like, maybe you're doing the grass is greener thing, or you saw something glittery and thought it was gold, or you're just afraid to actually address issues with them, and so you're procrastinating, and it's creating emotional pain for them. And they might say something to you like, you know what, I hope somebody does stuff to you, all the stuff to you that you did to me. Like, look at how much stuff that I've done for you, and I'm not even a transactional person, but I've done a lot for you, and it's worth mentioning, and you got to discern. Because if you've been through a lot of trauma, you got to discern which is which. Which person is saying it to manipulate you, and which person is saying it because you genuinely need to be accountable for your behavior of hurting other people, right? And I think the same thing too is like, who's speaking a new truth to us that we weren't aware of, and who is being manipulated by other people to say things to us, and why. I think there's a lot of that why stuff in there. It's like, what's your motivation? What is the reason that you're doing this? And I don't know, just a lot of clarifying energy. I really feel that really strongly, that that's coming in. And I'm going to pull a card at least for today, and I'll probably do like a next 7 or something like that. But I think that it's really coming in an energy of the spirit in which we do things, which is like, you know, if I tell you, hey, don't talk to me like that. Don't be disrespectful to me. Yeah, you could say that I'm being controlling, but you know the spirit of what I mean. If you're talking disrespectfully to me, then it's appropriate that I have control in that moment. Or if you're talking disrespectfully to somebody else, that is appropriate. Or if there's been, if I've been being very, very giving, hey there, Miss Annie's, or sorry, Miss Aries. Um, I still love our combo the other day, by the way. But if I'm saying, hey, like, you know what, if I've asked you a whole bunch of times to like observe an appropriate work schedule or kid schedule or things like that, and you don't do it, or you cancel a lot or things like that, then yeah, it's appropriate that I then prioritize my own time and say, you can be here between this time and that time, or I am available between this time and that time. Yes, is it controlling? Yes, but the spirit of it matters. Like trying to say, you got to be home by 10 p.m., or you got to be home right after work every freaking day because I make dinner. I mean, yes, it's good to have healthy dynamics about, when you will and won't be home, but that's manipulating, and there's no reason to be controlling like that. Likewise, like, say, if you're in a co-parenting situation and, one parent has been being immature and it's been hurting the kids and things like that, and the other parent starts saying, no, you know what, here's boundary 1, here's boundary 2, here's boundary 3. You want to keep it up? You want to keep it up? We can do more. Like that, like, yes, that might seem controlling, and it is controlling, but it's healthy controlling, because everything has a positive and a negative. Yeah, there's a lot of like that. And like I was saying in the beginning, like, if you're on the end of somebody's now being controlling with you, or you feel like they're being controlling, or maybe they're being distant and not having fights with you, or things like that, it can be like, even if you are a pretty healthy person, if you're used to having those dynamics with them, it can throw you off. And it's only if you're conscious enough to realize what's going on, and like, it's not usually personal, it's usually their negative response and something within them, that you can go, oh, you know what, this is actually good. Like, I'm just having a response to how unusual it is. And you can recognize, like you can look for, what are the key indicators here? What is the spirit to which this is being done in? Was this person always like this with me, or do they get like this when I'm not being accountable? And is this person saying this stuff to me because I'm actually doing something wrong, or is it their insecurities, or are they being possessive or jealous or things like that? Like, what's the reason, what's the spirit behind it? And I think that's really big too, because we might, I think with the clash of the Titans energy, especially, I'm really feeling like feminines in the collective are we're really standing in our power, and not so much in a. I think, well, I think it's twofold. I think feminines who are at least aware of their healing journey are much more able to stand in their power than they ever have before, and to feel good about it, to trust themselves, especially if you're, let's call it, in the graduating class of 2021, like Divine Maverick says about the DMs and stuff. Like, if you're in that graduating class, then this year for you is removing the training wheels, and you're like, no, you know what? I know this boundary is appropriate. I know this thing to say is appropriate. I know that it is good to do this. And then the other side of that, we've got a lot of unhealed feminines who are violating boundaries. Like, and remember, boundaries are rules we hold for ourselves, not for others. Like, will I respond to that? Will I go like lurk on this person? Will I look at their Facebook page? Will I watch a whole bunch of tarot videos about them? Will I keep talking to them? Will I have these fights? Things like that. Those are boundaries, but also rules too. Like, somebody else might give us a rule, like, don't come to my work, right? Or don't message me after this time, or don't tell me about the rest of your life if it's not relevant to what's going on with us, or what's going on with kids, or what's going on with the job, or what's going on with our family. Like, I don't want to know about it. And the other side of the feminine energies, I think, which can include, you can be male or female. I think this is just where the feminine, the duality in it is that you got the one side of standing strong in their power, that Titan energy, but also remember that not all Titans were good Titans, right? Like, some of them were evil, so to speak. I'm using that very lightly, but they had nefarious intent. And I mean, if you could imagine, kind of like what great one is, would be like Zeus and Hades, and it's perfect because Zeus was not all good, and Hades was not all bad, but we know how they're personified. And you could take that even, what's her name, Hera or Rhea, who was the queen of the gods, and she was Zeus's wife, versus, let's say, Persephone. And again, like, we know the overall embodiment of them, but neither was all good or all bad. But they're definitely, like, one was in a lower energy and one was in a higher energy more consistently than the other. And really, it's a personal question about who you believe was. But I think that these are the energies that are going on. Is we've got, lots of awareness of feminine energy about, oh, I need to change my behavior. I need to have healthy boundaries. I need to hold healthy boundaries. And here's the time when I need to set one, versus this is a time I just need to not pursue it. Like, if it was with a healthy person, that I could set it with them and it would be fine. But if it's not, I'm not going to get into this dynamic of, being called manipulative or doing this other stuff. Like, I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to go live my life and do what I want to do, even if this is somebody I really care about or not. And then you've got the other side of that energy is the feminines really like breaking rules, breaking boundaries, lying, being deceitful, refusing to be accountable and stuff, which we also see in the masculine duality. We see, the duality of the emperor energy, of like some masculines that are like, they've been in a lot of negative energy and they've not been accountable, they've not been facing things, and now they're getting hit with all the karma of that. Hence the justice card in, for that Libra moon, is they're really being hit with that in like every possible way, that they've not been accountable. And we're going to see two sides to that. Some of them are going to try to go into the unstable, yeah, the unstable emperor energy, being very egotistical, being very childish, being very like creating more chaos because they don't want to be faced with other boundaries, even if they know that it's something they need to do. And the other side of that, like, no, you know what? I messed up and my kingdom has suffered because of it, and I need to correct this. And I think there's definitely an axis within that of like the hero versus the coward, or the brave versus the coward. Like we're seeing a lot of that energy. In what ways are we brave, and in what ways are we cowardly, and which of those ways and those dualities is good or bad? Because it could be said that it's like if you have an opportunity to confront somebody, there are times when it's actually braver and has more integrity to not, to say, no, I'm not going to have that fight with you. And there are other times that it is completely cowardly to say, well, I don't fight anymore. I'm more mature than that. But then you never get to resolutions about things. There are different things. And we really, I think that that sort of truth in the justice card is really bringing that clarity out. Like, there are times when speaking up is good and times when it is bad. There are times when breaking the rules is good and times when it's bad. There are times when having firmer, more rigid boundaries is good, and other times it's really bad. Or likewise, it's good sometimes to have really loose boundaries, and other times it's really, really bad. Um, and even like I recognize an energy coming in too that came about this time last year, which is embrace your dark side. That doesn't mean go be an asshole, but it does recognize that there are, I mean, we're beings of contrast. We're not all good and we're not all bad. And there are, I mean, there's plenty of stories littered throughout both actual human history and mythologies from all sorts of cultures where a conceivably bad guy or bad gal did good things, or that there were characters that we thought were bad but actually they were deeply good, and they, you know, they even used that the what people thought was their badness to help others, even though they knew that they would be cast as the bad guy. Like, they did it anyways. And there are plenty of other times where we'll see people that on the outside seem conceivably good. And they're actually really, really bad people. And they use their ability to bend the light to hide between other people, in between, well, I suppose between and behind other people's trauma, so that they're not seen, or so they're seen as a victim and not actually needing to be accountable for the stuff that they're doing. I think there's a lot of, I don't know, I'm speaking a lot to this. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more of this energy, but I think really the Clash of the Titans, it's both internal and it's external, where we're really seeing ourselves decide. Like, some of us consciously, like, you know what, will I indulge my ego today or not? Will I hold this boundary or not? Will I will I give another a person another chance? That's what I was going to say. I think some of the energy is that we're seeing is the exception to the rules, and both when that is abused and when it is not acknowledged enough. Like, we could we could have like we could have seen a bunch of people in our lives that were genuinely toxic, and we know and we have confirmed evidence that they're choosing that, and they're not, there's no, how do I even put it? Like, I think there are times when it's obvious that somebody is choosing a toxic cycle and choosing not to get out of it, and that's on them, and we have to release them to be in that mess. And then there are other times when we're not even aware of how entrapping it can be when somebody's using really deep emotional manipulation on you. I think that's why this miscarriage energy is coming in. And now that I think about it, I think I saw it, well, actually, now I think about it, a lot of readers have been talking about this, especially over the last 6 months, is like, not just in the twin flame journey, but I think more consistently in that than in regular stuff, is a lot of this energy of those that have been in karmic cycles realizing that a child was never theirs, or was made up, or was used to manipulate them in inappropriate ways. And I think that we're also seeing the energy of recognizing those people in our lives who, they were so unhealed that, like, they want to get healed, but they're so unhealed that they're being entrapped, they're being entangled, tangled up in these webs, and they don't know how to get out of it. And we might see ourselves interacting with these people and seeing things that we haven't seen before, seeing when is this the exception to the rule, and then also when should we not allow an exception to the rule, which is about learning to heal splitting, black and white thinking, and pedestaling. Because even if we see someone who genuinely deserves our compassion and empathy for a situation they're in, oftentimes we actually need to have better boundaries with them than others, like than a stranger or something. It could be family member, loved one, things like that, and it will actually help them after they have their spin out or freak out or conflict with you. They're actually going to realize they probably feel better knowing that you're going to be consistent like that, and they might start applying that in the rest of their lives. And especially if they're being manipulated by, of any gender or expression, somebody who's like using really deep emotional stuff to either try to create a story that doesn't exist, or to cover up a story that was different before, or to add on to it. Things, I don't know. I think there's a lot of unmasking coming out, and I think it's really relevant too, because societally, with C19 going away, we're literally unmasking more often now. It's still not complete, but I think we'll probably see a lot. I think it's really, really aligned that we have this, we had this Libra full moon energy carrying over the next 6 months on the axis of the Aries sun, with, quarantine going away. We're removing the masks. We're seeing ourselves. We're seeing others. We're seeing the truths. We're seeing the burdens we've carried that we were never meant to, or that other people used to really get us there. We're also seeing times when people used really deep emotional stuff to set us free. To either they triggered us intentionally, or they didn't know that it would be, they didn't know that it was going to do that. Brought something up that really just went, ugh. And I think we're also kind of in an energy of recognizing the ways, I want to say, the ways that we can be replaced, and healing like a fear of inadequacy or being left out, fears of abandonment, which makes sense because that Chiron energy in there. But recognizing just how small we are and how big we are in the grander scheme of things, especially as social beings. Like, for instance, like being adopted, like I have one biological mother, right? And I have one adopted mother. But conceivably, there's lots of people who've been through the foster care system. They have only one biological parent, set of parents, but they may have had many other parents. Or you may have adopted other parents, or been adopted by other parents because you didn't have it great at home. Or maybe you even just got bonus parents, right? Maybe you got step parents, things like that. But sometimes we don't realize that we don't have to be the only ones, or we don't have to hold on only to another person. Those roles can be filled by others, and we don't have to do that. Like, everybody has options, but it's really, I think it's a time of clarifying, like, where am I giving love and where am I receiving love? And are those the only ways to do it? Are those the only people that, like, why am I limiting myself? What's the reasons for it? Why am I, why do I need this from this person? And especially the people that we have the deepest heart connections with, love them or not, understand them or not. If we're in a toxic dynamic with them, it's not going to be helped if we continue it. And likewise, are there some people that we've allowed dynamics to get toxic with who didn't deserve it? Or that we could, like, we recognize we could have put in more effort into that. All right, I'm feeling the energy petering out, so I'm going to pull a card here and then we'll get off. And I don't know what video I'll do next, but something. Thank you, Spirit, for a card for the daily vibes. Dude, these cards are kind of like, I don't know that I want to be spun around like this. I don't know if I'm going to should I take? I'm gonna take it. It's tingling. It was poking itself out, just the top of it. And I've never actually seen this card, so I'm gonna read the book to it. But I love it. Oh man, it's like Alice in Wonderland meets oh man, almost like Alice in Wonderland meets Dorothy from Wizard of Oz and Tinkerbell from Never Never Land. And if you see, like, she's on there. So I almost like this hermit energy. I almost said hornet, which is interesting. It might be something going on with bees, or that's very much Clash of the Titans warrior type energy. But number 2 is related to the High Priestess, and I love it because the High Priestess is kind of like the Pope, and there's a bit of pompery in it, like dressing up in all your ceremonial garb or regalia, and like, that you're doing a serious thing, but the universe loves to laugh too, and that's why she's kind of got a little bit of a Mona Lisa smirk going on. And I think that's when we're really in divine energy. We don't take a whole lot of things personally, and we recognize the absurdity that it's all open. It's like a free play game. You can go do anything that you want. And if you want, this one shows, like, there's one of the signs says crossroads, the other one says scenic view, the other one says curious town. Can't really read. Oh, it's funny, the last one says something about, I think it's road end number 13, which is, I love that that 13 death card, right? Transformations. And I think with the bag and the fact that I just saw a tool truck drive by, that and 33:44 on the clock, that we're also really recognizing what tools we have around us, whether that's actual tools, whether that's to do with our job, or maybe mental health tools or things like that. And the way the cards got shuffled, we have seventh chakra in reverse, Archangel Uriel 41, so 5. So, and that's crown chakra. I think, I guess we'll read a little bit more in a minute. Oh, interesting. I think this came up the other day. So, hot topic, anxiety in reverse. Um, we may be talking a fair amount about how we're not going to let our anxiety stop us, even like anxious attachment or things like that. And in the heart of the matter is financial constraints. So any sort of relationships where there've been, I want to say, if you've been in a situation where either you're waiting on somebody, or they've been supposed to be interacting with you, or they've been supposed to been paying you maybe child support, or just repayment on some money you borrowed or something, or maybe you tried to have a business with them, that either they're going to make that right, or they're gonna stop allowing other financial constraints to stop them from doing the right thing, or you're gonna see through it that it's never gonna get better and end it. Um, and because that card has one door closed, I think that's part of that clarifying justice energy of like seeing that there are hidden things, like kind of seeing what the hidden things are, and also recognizing that like some people are always going to keep things hidden. There's never going to always be like a big reveal of things, and you got to decide, are you okay with that? Can you live with that? Can you stay with that if they never change? If not, then don't. Let's see what this card has to say. Card number 2, journey. I just think that's a lot of the good energy of today, is like recognizing the journey that we're on, making it a journey that we choose rather than a journey that we feel forced into. Like, I mean, you might be in a situation where you're around a lot of codependent people who don't treat you right, don't talk to you right, don't do things like that. Like, what journey are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to be on a journey where that's acceptable and that continues, and you just have to learn to live with that? Or are you going to be on a journey where you say, enough? you know, and that might create some of the clash of the Titan energy, but that's okay. That's okay. Um, so number 2, movement, relocation, and travel. Upright, pack your bags. The journey card foretells upcoming travel or a shift in location. It may be as simple as a vacation, a retreat, or a class, or even a work-related trip. This card could also signal a move of residence or a job relocation. The upright position indicates that the plan should go off without a hitch. Still, be clear about your motivation and mindful of logistics. All of life is a journey, and this card is telling you that you have some exciting and inspiring adventures ahead. Nice. Affirmation: I am attracting wonderful new adventures to me. My life is a blessing, taking me to new places inside and out. I love that. It's very Fool card too. And it's funny. I think that energy's been in the background too, of like ending of jobs, ending of bad relationships, moving locations, traveling. You might see things coming up that had to do with recent travel, or it might be future travel, or other things like that. And interesting, weird. You might see weird things happening. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here, as we're almost at 40 minutes, and I don't know if I like that yet or not. I kind of like the daily vibes to be a little bit shorter, but sometimes I'm just going to go with the flow and not take life that seriously. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.